You know, they say that all videos are created equal. But you look at me, and you look at these thumbnails, and you can see that statement is not true. You look at the metrics, and you see that you got a 50-50 chance of watching a video past the introduction. But I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal. So you got a 25% at best chance of clicking away from this bit. Then you add my dog Hazel into the mix, and your chances of clicking away go drastically down. See, you got a 33 1/3 chance of clicking away, but I got a 66 2/3 chance of you staying because Hazel is a good dog, and she knows she's a good dog, and you know she's a good dog, and you're not even gonna try to deny it. So you take your 33 1/3 chance, and minus your 25% chance, and you got an 8 1/3 chance of clicking away from this bit. But then you take your 75% chance of you staying, and then you add another 100% because I'm just making stuff up. And you got like 168 2/3 chance of watching through the intro of this video because you just did. Hi, I'm Ricky. Let's talk about wrestling, the evolution of kayfabe, and how every streamer, even me, is basically a wrestler at the end of the day. But before we get into it though, I'm gonna go get some tea and honey because my throat hurts. The story of kayfabe is fascinating. Just the fact that you might actually know what I'm talking about when I say that word means that its usage and meaning has changed dramatically over the past 100 years or so. Historians trace the origin of kayfabe to the carnival days. It was used as a code word, meaning something to the effect of be fake or get into character. Mentioning kayfabe was a way for a performer to remind another performer that they were putting on a show without directly mentioning it in front of an audience or someone that wasn't in on the ruse. You see, before professional wrestlers were drawing crowds to their own shows, wrestling was a sideshow hustle. And it would go a little something like this. I believe we have some archival footage. Could we maybe roll that now? Step right up, who dares battle the one and only, the deadliest deity, antagonist with antlers. She's rough, she's tough. Whomst amongst you has got the stuff? Surely someone in this crowd will not fear the deer. Roar! Jesus Christ, what a horrifying monster. I've got the stuff. I don't fear the deer. And so it would go. An audience plant that's in on the scheme would step up and win a scripted bout. A gullible member of the audience, also known as a mark, would buy into the show and decide that they also have the stuff to take on the wrestler. They'd pay for a match, quickly lose, and be none the wiser that the whole thing had been a farce. In these early days, kayfabe was a way of keeping the integrity of the hustle going. Neither the wrestler or the audience plant could let on that their fight was scripted. And if they did, and the audience figured it out, the whole thing would fall apart like, well, you know. Eventually, wrestling shows became their own attraction and not just a sideshow. While they were initially conceived as legitimate athletic competitions, over time the wrestlers realized that pre-scripted bouts could be more entertaining and bring in more repeat business in the long term. Kayfabe remained an essential part of the business during this era, but it had to grow and change to fit this new show. Now it's less about hiding a hustle, and it's more about selling the show as a legitimate athletic contest, even if everyone knows that the winner has been pre-decided. After all, who would want to go see a show, never mind go back to see a show, that was obviously fake or didn't take itself seriously? And if a wrestler couldn't sell it, they were going to have a short career at best, or at worst, could potentially tank the whole production. Just take a look at the Shaq Master!
All right! The Shaq Master! I told you. Oh, God.
Prior to his botched introduction, he was an upper card wrestler under the name Tugboat. This one moment destroyed his career.
The Shaq Master!
Was intended to be a serious character, but he had to be ultimately rewritten as a klutz because audiences couldn't buy him as a serious actor anymore. This one real-life mistake made the suspension of disbelief impossible. Heck, The Undertaker is a notorious enforcer of kayfabe, likely because he knows that his career could end the nanosecond that people are no longer able to suspend disbelief and believe that he is an undead biker, mortician, wizard, gunslinger. You get the picture. Bigger shows and bigger crowds also brought with them more theatrical elements, like the face, a protagonist that the crowd is meant to cheer for, and the heel, a villain that's meant to be booed. Storylines would follow these characters as faces became heels, heels were redeemed into faces. But these roles were more than just in-ring personas. They followed the wrestlers everywhere that they went. Promoters, after all, couldn't sell a show where two wrestlers that are supposed to be mortal enemies could be caught 5 miles down the road at a Waffle House having dinner after the show. This is one of the ways where wrestling, aka sports theater, differs from conventional theater. When you go see a stage play, there are rules. You sit in your assigned seat, you know the performers are just playing roles, it's listed right there in the playbill. When the curtain falls and the show is over, everyone just snaps back to reality. The same role might even be embodied by multiple people over time. The same thing, though, can't be said of wrestling, where performers are not interchangeable. The dynamics of the stage are so well established and so well understood that Goffman pulled from that language when formulating dramaturgical sociology, specifically using the language of a front stage and backstage dynamic to explain how our behaviors are contextualized by time, place, and audience. In this area of sociology, we're all actors, and we are all presenting different facets of ourselves to different audiences all the time. But with wrestling, the roles don't end with the close of the curtain. When I went around asking my friends for examples of kayfabe, they all stopped to tell me about Iron Sheik and Jim Duggan getting arrested together for smoking weed in a car. In the ring, the two hated each other, but out of the ring, they got caught just hanging out. And in the fallout of the event, Iron Sheik was fired. Later, when John Stossel was doing a 2020 segment on whether or not wrestling is real, Dr. D infamously slapped him twice for asking if wrestling was fake. He was so committed to his heel character that he committed assault to maintain kayfabe. That's how seriously people took this. And I've only talked about American wrestling so far. It gets even more intense when you pivot to the world of luchadors. Take Blue Demon, for example. His real name was not public record until his death, and he was buried in his mask. His adopted son, Blue Demon Jr., is continuing that same tradition now. However, as the business grew, cracks started to emerge. During the mid-90s, several high-profile shoots, or kayfabe breaks, started to erode the time-honored code of maintaining that illusion. There was the curtain call, where Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall came out and bowed to a confused crowd on the night of Nash and Hall's final performances in the WWE. I really can't imagine what it would be like to be in the crowd during this, because at this point, presumably everyone thought this was real, and then all of a sudden, you have two faces and two heels, hand in hand, bowing almost like it's not real. There was also the Montreal Screwjob, where Bret the Hitman Hart was screwed out of his title during his last match in the WWE. The resulting fallout gave fans their first real look into the business of wrestling and the locker room drama that previously they could only speculate about. You'd also point to the steroid scandal that had Hulk Hogan admitting in court that he had used steroids even though his public persona swore that his physique was the result of vitamins and prayers. Eventually, Vince McMahon rebranded wrestling as sports entertainment and dropped the facade that this was a real competition. And just like that, the decades-long illusion, an illusion that men had committed crimes to protect, was broken. And yet, it wasn't the end. Kayfabe had started as a way to keep a secret about a rigged carnival game. It had grown into a network of performers, producers, and managers that were strictly committed to keeping up the illusion that wrestling was real. And now, the circle had to expand again. Fans were in on it. And phrases like work, shoot, and of course kayfabe, that were once closely guarded secrets had become common knowledge. And just take a look at the kinds of signs that fans bring to shows. They are an integral and active part of the show. and they know it. Awareness of the show has also given rise to the worked shoot. This is a deliberate blending of reality and performance where a performer appears to go off script and pull back the curtain on the backstage information, but in reality, it's all planned. Like in this moment where CM Punk goes off on a worked shoot where he talks about topics that would ordinarily be taboo, like the nature of planned storylines, his frustration with his lack of promotion, he actively insults the fans, he calls The Rock Dwayne. And yet, it's all planned. A moment like this can only exist in the world of modern wrestling, where kayfabe is less about being fake and less about keeping secrets and more about a collective performance where everyone knows what is going on and can refer to it and play off of that awareness. This is the modern stage of wrestling. But there is another thing that we need to talk about. The advent of the internet, particularly, dramatically changed the landscape of kayfabe. When I was a kid, I watched SmackDown on Thursday nights, and that was it. There was no on-demand video or anything like that, so missing the show meant that I had to hear about what had happened the next day at school, and also that I was lamer than usual. Times have changed since then. Decades of footage are available here on YouTube. Highlights are available on social media. I don't even really watch wrestling anymore, and I still know what's going on because my friends are so diligent about live tweeting every event. The performance that had been initially confined to the ring, then grew out into the locker room, and then grew again to encompass the fans and the whole arena, has exploded into the internet into a 24/7 performance. Via the internet, fans are also able to leverage their weight of numbers to let their opinions be known in real time. This has even impacted storylines as the fans were directly sending their comments to the writer's room via social media campaigns like Occupy Raw, allowing them to directly impact the show they are watching while it is being written. As wrestling has gotten bigger, major wrestling stars have also branched out to become movie stars. We live in a world where Dwayne Johnson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, The Rock, and whoever he was on Voyager are all different roles that should be treated differently. Even more confusingly, John Cena, and yes, John Cena are also different roles of the same performer with differing levels of kayfabe, and they are all under the same name. In a world where there is no longer a functional backstage away from crowds, how do we know what is and isn't part of the performance? It's actually a very complicated question, and it's something that has to be negotiated constantly between the performer and their fans. When the stage does not naturally exist, it becomes necessary to create it, because the alternate reality that's created via kayfabe only exists insofar as it has something to contrast against. And you know who else has to navigate a lot of these same dynamics on the internet.com? Literally everyone! But let's focus on VTubers for now. Wrestlers and VTubers have a lot in common. Many wrestlers also bring their characters into social media as active players in that space while keeping up kayfabe. Yes, you could make the argument that all streamers are playing a persona. Between you and me, I don't think they go around making these reaction faces in their day-to-day lives. It's just a hunch. Don't worry, you didn't hear it from me. But with VTubers, there's the addition of the character, and that adds another level to the performance. In fact, you can probably take any VTuber's lore and pitch it as a wrestler concept. Let's take me, for example. I was a great and powerful witch, but I got sick and tired of swamp magic. It just gets so messy with all the curses and the poison. So I decided to turn my swamp hut into a cafe, but I've got one problem. The foot traffic is terrible, so to drum up business, I'm turning to my one other true passion, wrestling. See? It works. And don't even try to tell me you wouldn't go see that. I would go see that, but I can't be in two places at once. Usually. Multi-track tubing. Best collab. Most virtual YouTubers have some degree of backstory around their character, and assets that help them build up a general vibe. The character could just be window dressing, or it could help give some context to the kinds of things that someone could expect from the streamer. For example, maybe a teacher character would do an educational stream. It could matter a lot, or it could barely matter at all, or it could even be bait. And in some cases, a performer might actually use the viewer's expectations against them and play against the character. Like Otogibara Era, formerly of the agency Niji Sanji, she debuted with a very reserved fairy tale princess persona that she herself never really put that much effort into. And eventually, she showed herself to be anything but that. She was loud, rude, crude, and lewd. And the clash of the person and the persona became part of the spectacle. It's one of the things that she's most remembered for. Also, like wrestlers, the same performer might wear multiple hats during the course of their career. Maybe they enter a company, leave a company, or just feel like making a change. Unlike wrestlers, who are still limited by their physical bodies, making it hard to completely shift gears, having a digital body like this comes with some cool perks, one of which is how easy it is to radically change things up. Maybe I'll make a video about that in the future, actually, and we can get real nice and cozy and intimate, and we'll talk about gender. But in the meantime, take this hypothetical situation from a fan's perspective. A popular independent performer that they follow might suddenly announce their retirement or graduation. A few weeks or months later, a new character debuts with a big company that has the same mannerisms and voice as their old fave. It's obvious what's going on. One of their favorite creators just got a huge break. It's usually something you would want to celebrate, but this creates a conundrum. Now you've got a number of fans, maybe even a large number of fans, that can put 2 and 2 together. But acknowledging that 2 plus 2 equals 4 would break kayfabe at best and create problems for their favorite streamer at worst. Unlike wrestling, where what happens behind the scenes is now fair game to speculate about and even to openly discuss, because of potential non-disclosure agreements, acknowledging their history could actually violate their contract and get them fired. And understandably, fans don't want to put their favorite performers in this kind of compromising position. So whatever came before the performer's new character isn't part of the current performance, even if knowing what came before can help add context or meaning to what they're doing now. And this is actually not that uncommon of a situation. I'm not going to name names because I'm not an asshole. But I basically live under a rock when it comes to this stuff. And even I can think of about half a dozen examples off the top of my head, so odds are you can think of a few yourself. While doing research for this video, I had the chance to talk to one of the moderators of a fan Discord built up around a performer in one of these situations. I would say that they agreed to speak to me under the condition of anonymity, but they didn't. But just pretend that I did say that because it's really cool. So, from what they have told me, even in the absence of the performer themselves, fans still have to negotiate what is and isn't fair game to talk about. And so moderators of those spaces have to make decisions around stuff like, is it okay to talk about the prior persona as long as you aren't making a direct connection? Or do we allow this piece of fan art that someone made that makes a direct connection between the past and present characters? Everyone in that space might be aware of the elephant in the room, but until the performer brings it into the performance, the subject is off limits for discussion. And while some performers and fans that buy into the suspension of disbelief work together to draw the lines of what is and isn't part of the performance, there are some who will disregard that whole conversation for any number of reasons. Maybe they don't want to feel like they're being tricked. Maybe they just want the attention that comes from stirring the pot, or maybe they just can't let go of the good old days. Regardless of the reason, there are folks out there that have seeded YouTube with videos basically doxing VTubers with their real names, faces, and prior personas. It's the equivalent of someone coming up and telling you, hey buddy, did you know that wrestling isn't real? Dude, we know. We all know. I find kayfabe fascinating enough that I've spent over 20 hours putting together this video already, and I'm not even close to done yet. So you can imagine how it felt when I was caught at a party, and without any real prompting, another guest started telling me a bunch of personal information about an extremely popular VTuber that they happened to be friends with, including their actual name and character. So even if I didn't know at the start of the conversation, they made sure that I knew who they were talking about by the end. And even though we were occupying the same physical space, our relationships to the sort of hyper-reality of the performance space couldn't have been any more different. You see, the negotiation of kayfabe extends beyond just personal information about a performer and their other projects. Part of the etiquette of streaming is also not to mention other streamers unless the person you're watching brings them up first. It comes back to the same idea. The dynamics of the stage, including who's on it, have to be negotiated. For fans to bring up other performers in a way that distracts from what's going on screen, wrestles control the performance away from the streamer and redraws the lines of the performance without their consent. On the flip side, though, fans can also impact the performance positively by giving the performer ideas to spin off of, and whether that's suggesting new avenues of content to explore or by creating fan works like art and comics that add to the performance itself. In the age of the internet, kayfabe allows the audience to directly interact with the performance by bringing in their own ideas and reactions. Remember when we talked about Occupy Raw a couple of minutes ago? This is the same kind of thing. Fans are able to interact in real time in a way that makes them an active participant in what's going on, and they are aware of that. Whether you're a virtual YouTuber or someone more like
The Shack Master!
Technical difficulties are an inevitability. Maybe you forget that you took off your hat for a joke tweet and you didn't put it back on before the big collaboration stream. Maybe you forgot to turn off the color filter and now you look like a spooky ghost on stream. These kinds of hiccups can be inconveniences, but they can also provide performers with an opportunity to play off the nature of the digital medium in ways that just wouldn't be possible elsewhere. If kayfabe is now about building an alternate reality through storytelling, being able to play off of these issues and build them into the performance is probably the marker of a truly great performer. And now, with all that in mind, let's bring it all on home and wrap this video up. Kayfabe is a lot of things, but I want to revisit that original definition that we started with. Be fake. What started as a code word to keep marks in the dark about the hustle they were falling into has changed with the times. What we have now is a unique kind of postmodern interactive theater unlike anything before or since. VTubing builds on that by moving past the limitations of physical bodies. Everything in VTubing is the product of an ongoing interaction between the performer and their audience. Sometimes I'm a barrel, sometimes I'm a bottle of Malort, sometimes I'm a Fumo, but I'm always myself through it all. So if it's all just make-believe though, does that mean that it's fake? Look, I wasn't a fan of wrestling when I started working on this video, but after talking to fans, hearing their passion, and revisiting suggested matches, I'm in. When I see someone fling their opponent off the top of a cage onto a table below, I don't think that's fake at all. And I know that there are some performers out there that might find the comparison between wrestling and VTubing unflattering. If you're one of them, first, thank you for watching this video through to the end. Second, hear me out. I don't think any of this is fake, whether it's in wrestling or streaming. Yes, it can be scripted. But there are awesome performers pushing the boundaries of their chosen medium via technology and their own talent every day. The passion people put in, the work their fans do, the memories we create, and the emotions that we feel are as real as anything else. In fact, because we have to constantly negotiate and draw and redraw the lines of where the performance begins and ends, might actually make those things realer than real. This is what Baudrillard would call hyper-reality. And no, they're going to tuck this one away for another video. Please wait warmly for my postmodern video in the near future. But for now, take care. And I hope I see you again.